Let's start it with our first news. UFC welterweight contender Gilbert Burns recently shared his thoughts on Alex Pereira's first fight against Ankalaev, and he believes the outcome may have been heavily influenced by Pereira not being at full strength on fight night. According to Burns, the former double champion was dealing with multiple setbacks that limited his performance, and he expects a completely different outcome if Pereira enters their rematch fully prepared and healthy. Burns explained that while Ankalaev is an undeniably tough opponent, Pereira was far from his best the first time they fought. The way I see it, Ankalaev is very tough, but on that night, I don't think Alex was at 100%. He himself admitted he was maybe around 40%, Burns said. I don't know if it was really 40, but you could tell something was off. From the beginning of the fight, he didn't look like himself. It felt like he was hesitant, maybe a little too worried about the takedown, and he wasn't letting his shots go. Burns pointed out that despite Pereira showing flashes of strong takedown defense, he never truly unleashed his striking the way fans are accustomed to seeing. Instead, Pereira looked flat and hesitant, which Burns attributes to the hectic schedule and circumstances surrounding him leading up to the fight. He had mentioned afterward that he got sick when he traveled to Australia, and when he came back he still wasn't feeling well, Burns explained. On top of that, he was working a lot, traveling everywhere, doing appearances, and living that star lifestyle. I don't think he was training the way he usually does, and it showed in the fight. He wasn't sharp, he wasn't aggressive, and he didn't look like the same killer we usually see inside the octagon. Despite those struggles, Burns believes that if Pereira shows up in top condition for the rematch, the fight could end very differently. If this guy shows up at 100%, I think he knocks out Ankalaev, Burns said with confidence. You know me, you know how good that would be for MMA. It would be insane for the sport. Burns also highlighted that Pereira's unique ability to draw fans makes his fights even more impactful for the MMA community. Alex is a superstar. When he fights, the whole MMA world watches. If he goes out there, performs at his best, and takes out a guy like Ankalaev, it's going to be massive. That's the kind of fight that creates buzz, brings new fans to the sport, and gets everyone talking. As UFC 320 approaches, anticipation continues to build around Pereira's return. Fans are eager to see whether he can bounce back with a statement performance against a dangerous opponent like Ankalaev. If Burns' prediction comes true and Pereira competes at full capacity, we could be looking at one of the biggest highlights of the year. Before we jump into the next story, we have a small favor to ask. If you're enjoying the content, please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell icon. It really helps us out and ensures you'll never miss an update. Move on to another news. Conor McGregor is once again making headlines, this time with a bold announcement regarding his long-rumored return to the octagon. According to The Notorious, his fight at the historic White House event is officially signed, sealed, and finalized. While fans have grown used to McGregor teasing comeback dates that often fail to materialize, the former two-division UFC champion insists this time it's the real deal. Speaking on the subject, McGregor declared with confidence, "It's a done deal. Signed, delivered. This isn't a negotiation, it's finalized." He doubled down on his claim, stating that fans can rest assured his long-awaited return is locked in for UFC's groundbreaking White House card, which has been heavily teased as one of the biggest spectacles in combat sports history. McGregor emphasized that this fight carries more significance than just his personal return. It can ignite a support for the people of America and beyond, he said, suggesting that the event is about more than just business, it's about creating a moment that resonates globally. When pressed on whether UFC President Dana White still needed to approve the bout, McGregor dismissed the concern. "Me and Dana are in constant communications," he explained. "We've done incredible business together. I'm the highest generating fighter of all time in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and Dana knows that. We've built history together, and this is just another chapter." Adding fuel to the excitement, McGregor also referenced UFC's recent blockbuster broadcast deal with Paramount, which he described as breathtaking. According to McGregor, the $7.7 billion agreement, which will bring UFC events to mainstream cable television, represents a new era for the sport. "That deal has been approved and is ready to rock, baby," McGregor said. "Bring in the big dog, the Mac G is back." This isn't the first time McGregor has hinted at a monumental return, but the idea of a fight at the White House carries unprecedented weight. UFC has staged events in iconic arenas across the globe, from Madison Square Garden to sold-out stadiums in Abu Dhabi, but never before has the world's most famous fighting organization held a card at one of the most symbolic political landmarks on earth. McGregor's insistence that the deal is complete will only add to the anticipation as fans speculate about who his opponent might be. Rumors have circulated about potential clashes with longtime rivals such as Nate Diaz or Dustin Poirier, while others believe the UFC could opt for a fresh matchup to maximize the impact of such a historic event. Regardless of the opponent, McGregor's presence alone guarantees fireworks. Love him or hate him, there is no denying his influence on the sport. The Irish superstar has consistently broken pay-per-view records, elevated the UFC's mainstream profile, and captivated fans around the world with both his fighting style and his larger-than-life persona. Now, as UFC prepares to deliver its most ambitious event to date, McGregor's return veteran could mark yet another seismic moment in combat sports history. If his words prove true, fans may soon witness a spectacle unlike anything the sport has ever seen. McGregor under the bright lights of the White House lawn. Move on to another news. The MMA community has been buzzing with speculation about who Ilia Topuria will face in his first lightweight title defense. While most fans and analysts are pointing toward a blockbuster matchup between Topuria and Paddy Pimblett, former UFC middleweight champion and analyst Michael Bisping sees things differently. According to Bisping, there's a strong chance Justin Gaethje could leap ahead of Pimblett and get the fight. Bisping's reasoning is rooted in Gaethje's own recent comments. Justin has made it very clear that if he doesn't get a title shot, he's ready to retire, Bisping explained. That puts the UFC in a bit of a difficult position. The man is a fan favorite, a walking highlight reel, and one of the most violent fighters we've ever seen. If anyone has earned another crack at the belt, it's him. However, this viewpoint is far from unanimous. UFC President Dana White has previously expressed frustration when fighters openly discuss retirement before negotiations. White has been blunt in saying that if a fighter is already thinking about walking away, perhaps they shouldn't be competing at all. That sentiment casts doubt on whether the promotion would be willing to reward Gaethje's ultimatum with a title opportunity. On the other side of the conversation, Paddy Pimblett is emerging as one of the biggest stars in the sport. The undefeated Topuria versus the brash, outspoken Pimblett could easily headline a massive pay-per-view card and attract mainstream attention. The stylistic clash between Pimblett's relentless pressure and Topuria's sharp technical striking makes the fight all the more appealing. Many pundits believe it's the matchup UFC will lean toward, simply because of the commercial upside. Still, Bisping argues that Gaethje's resume and track record deserve recognition. Look, Ilia has to fight at some point, Bisping said. He's the reigning lightweight champion now after vacating the featherweight belt, and he's undefeated. If he doesn't defend his title, he risks being stripped. And when you look at the options, it's basically down to Justin Gaethje or Paddy Pimblett. Arman Tsarukyan is out of the picture right now, so it's between those two. If I were betting, I'd say Ilia ends up fighting Gaethje, simply because of the man's history, the wars he's given us, and the fact that he deserves it. Bisping also highlighted Gaethje's legacy. He's already fought for the title twice, and a third opportunity isn't easy to come by. But every single time he steps into the octagon, he delivers. Fight of the year contenders, absolute chaos, and a willingness to put everything on the line. That's why he's called the human highlight reel. And for the UFC, putting him against an undefeated champion like Topuria just makes sense. With Topuria now holding lightweight gold and carrying the momentum of being considered one of the pound-for-pound best fighters in the world, the stakes are higher than ever. Whether it's Pimblett, the surging fan favorite, or Gaethje, the proven veteran and fan-approved brawler, one thing is certain: Topuria's first lightweight title defense will be a fight the entire MMA world tunes in to watch. Move on to another news. MMA legend Quinton Rampage Jackson has never been one to hold back his thoughts, and this week was no different. The former UFC light heavyweight champion delivered a fiery response after his longtime rival, Wanderlei Silva, was knocked out cold during a chaotic exhibition boxing match last weekend. The event quickly spiraled into controversy. Silva, who was competing in what was billed as a friendly exhibition bout, was disqualified after repeatedly throwing headbutts at his opponent. The illegal tactics immediately drew boos from the crowd and sparked a heated confrontation inside the ring. What followed stunned fight fans. A full-blown brawl erupted, and Silva ended up being knocked unconscious by his opponent's son, who entered the fray. Jackson, who shared one of MMA's most iconic rivalries with Silva in Pride in the UFC, didn't hold back when giving his reaction. "I don't give a damn what people think about me," Rampage said. "One thing about me, I don't like bullies." Wanderlei was being a bully in that fight. Everyone in the MMA world knows Wanderlei is a bully. He was headbutting that guy, and that's not right. The two legends have a long and violent history. Silva famously defeated Rampage twice in Pride with vicious knees, but Jackson ultimately got his revenge years later in the UFC with a devastating knockout. Their feud is considered one of the greatest rivalries in combat sports history, defined by animosity, unforgettable fights, and raw intensity. So when Silva found himself on the receiving end of a knockout under controversial circumstances, Rampage didn't hesitate to voice his disdain. For Jackson, Silva's behavior in the exhibition match wasn't just poor sportsmanship, it was proof of a long-standing reputation. Wanderlei's been known for fighting dirty, Rampage continued. That's not news to anyone, but seeing him headbutt in a boxing match? That just proves it again. He's always had that bully mentality. And me? I can't stand bullies. Fans online have been divided in their reaction. Some sympathized with Silva, pointing out that the incident involved emotions boiling over in a heated exhibition setting. Others, however, agreed with Rampage's assessment, criticizing Silva's conduct and suggesting that the former Pride champion's best days are long behind him. Regardless of where fans stand, the spectacle has reignited memories of Silva's storied career. Known as the Axe Murderer, Silva was once one of the most feared fighters on the planet, with a ferocious style built on relentless aggression. His battles with Rampage, Dan Henderson, and Chuck Liddell are etched into MMA history, but his later career has been marred by
inconsistency, controversies, and moments like this latest debacle that have drawn more criticism than praise. Rampage, now retired and reflecting on the sport from the sidelines, sees Silva's recent actions as a disappointing reminder of how legacies can be tarnished.
At the end of the day, fighting's about respect, Rampage said. And if you can't respect your opponent and the rules, you've lost something bigger than the fight. The two men may never share the cage again, but their rivalry remains alive in the hearts of MMA fans, and Rampage's latest comments prove that, even years later, there's no love lost between him and Wanderlei Silva. Move on to another news. Former UFC middleweight champion Robert Whittaker recently shared his thoughts on Alex Pereira's meteoric rise and offered a fascinating take on who he believes would have been a nightmare matchup for the current light heavyweight king. While Pereira has dazzled fans with his elite striking since his UFC debut in 2022, Whittaker believes that prime Daniel Cormier would have posed insurmountable problems for Powhatan. Speaking on his MMA Arcade podcast, Whittaker praised Pereira's accomplishments and acknowledged his dangerous striking arsenal, but also pointed to the recurring conversation around Pereira's grappling and wrestling defense. Since making his UFC debut, Pereira has been incredible, Whittaker said. His striking is world-class, and he's run through a lot of his opponents. But stylistically, there are guys out there, especially in history, that I think would have given him hell. One of those guys is DC. Whittaker elaborated that a prime, light heavyweight Daniel Cormier would have been Pereira's worst nightmare. Light heavyweight DC would have run him over, Whittaker stated. I reckon in his prime, DC's wrestling and relentless pressure would have been too much. At that time, it was basically John Jones and DC running the division. No one else could really touch them, and there wasn't anyone who could take their spots. Cormier, an Olympic-level wrestler and former two-division UFC champion, was known for overwhelming opponents with chain wrestling, dirty boxing, and constant pressure. Whittaker's point was clear. While Pereira's striking is lethal, his defensive grappling would have been no match for someone of Cormier's caliber. Whittaker didn't stop there. He also highlighted another dangerous matchup for Pereira in the current UFC landscape, Magomed Ankalaev. I think Ankalaev is another guy who can beat Pereira, Whittaker explained. He's stylistically the antithesis of Alex. He's got that strong wrestling base, solid grappling, and enough striking to hang in there. That's the type of skill set you need to beat someone like Pereira. Whittaker pointed out that Pereira's most notable opponents thus far have largely been strikers, which has allowed him to showcase his stand-up dominance. You look at Pereira's opponents, he's run through them, but those weren't the guys to beat him, Whittaker said. I thought Jan Blachowicz was a good shout because of his grappling. We saw how close that fight was, and Jan had success in certain positions. But outside of him, there just aren't a lot of heavy wrestle mixed guys in the division at this moment. Whittaker's comments underline an ongoing debate within the MMA community. Can elite strikers like Pereira maintain championship dominance in divisions historically ruled by wrestlers and grapplers? While Pereira has silenced critics with knockout wins and championship victories, his weaknesses remain an area of intrigue, particularly when fans imagine how he would fare against past legends like Cormier or Khabib Nurmagomedov. For Whittaker, the hypothetical is simple. Prime DC runs over Pereira, he reiterated. He was just on another level with his wrestling and control. That's the type of fighter Pereira would struggle with. Against strikers, he's almost unbeatable. But against someone like DC, that's a nightmare matchup. As Pereira continues to cement his legacy, these conversations highlight the timeless appeal of MMA, the clash of styles and the what-if debates across generations. Whether against Ankalaev in the present or a prime Cormier in the past, Pereira's reign continues to spark curiosity about just how far his dominance can go.